Hey, Chamber members. Alan Waters here, your Director of Marketing and Communications at the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce and your Words of Wisdom podcast. And today I am joined by
Janelle Anderson.
Thank you, Janelle. Welcome back. This is your third episode so far. So most people are used to the fact that I'm asking that question of what does success mean to you? But at this point, not only have you answered that, you've also answered how it may have changed. So instead, I'm going to focus on what do you see as success when you're looking at others? I feel like there's often times somebody sees the amount of money someone has, someone sees the status, the keeping up with the Joneses of it all in terms of success. But for you, when you're looking at someone, what is a measure or a sign of success that you can tell?
Good question. Yeah, all those outward measures of success don't necessarily mean they're successful internally or happy, right? In fact, a lot of people have a lot of things and a lot of money and they're miserable and are working super hard and not having time with their family and feeling stressed. And I would not call that success. I think when I'm looking at somebody, when I see that they're really happy, they are doing what they're passionate about and feeling really fulfilled, excited. And I just ran an event this past weekend and there was one woman on there that was so passionate about and so excited about what she's getting ready to launch and do in the world, helping people with gut health. And she had a great story of her own journey. And you could just see her glowing with this excitement and passion. And yet she's just starting. So she doesn't really have money. Right. So, but in terms of what, I look at that and I see success in that she's found her thing and she's pursuing something that she really is passionate about. And I have no doubt she will succeed monetarily eventually. And to me, that's like success now, but also the potential for financial success as well. And what I kept telling them all weekend was our whole hashtag was let's transform lives. That's what really makes, especially for coaches or experts or people that are trying to help others make their lives better in some way. It's the transformation you see in somebody's life and you had a part in that. That's success.
Yeah. And so there's a creator I follow and he had something the other day that to me ties into this. He's a wedding photographer. And so he asked the question, is it better to be good as an artist or good as a photographer, or is it better to be good at business? And he pointed out the fact that there are people who will have 50, 60 weddings a year. And he said they're really good at business, but they may not be the best at actually taking the pictures. And yet there are other people who would be considered by all means like an incredible artist, but they're not booking as many weddings because they're not really focused on the marketing of the business and all of that. So how do you balance that as someone who is coming out and joining the workforce when you're looking at people from both sides? You're looking at people that you're like, oh God, they've got X, Y, and Z booked and I don't have that. Or, oh man, they talk really, really well. I wish I could do that. How do you guide someone along those lines?
So, comparison is the thief of joy, first of all. So everybody's on their own journey in business and entrepreneurship. And so when you compare yourself to somebody that has a huge following or, really good at what they do and lots of clients coming in the door, then you could look at that and easily be discouraged and think, I don't have that. I don't have that gene, or, I wasn't born with all that know-how. I don't have the ability to market and promote and sell. And this happens a lot with my clients because they're coaches and they just want to coach. They don't want to sell. They don't want to market, but you have to learn how to do that in order to attract your clients and make the money you need to keep your business going so you can continue to help people. So there is that huge, temptation to fall into that comparison. But, it's interesting that you brought this up because we talked about this weekend too, is that you see these successful people. And I was talking about the analogy of musicians, and because when I was younger, I wanted to play piano so bad. It was just this burning desire, but I hadn't played in over 10 years. And I tried to do it on my own. And didn't sound like the tapes I was listening to. And I looked at, really successful musicians who are super talented, and you just think, oh, I can't do that. I don't have that gene. And you think of them as coming out of the womb like that, but you don't see what happened behind the scenes. And the same thing with business. You don't see what they went through. You don't see how much time they put into it or how many times they failed.
Right.
And so you can't really compare yourself. And just know that a super successful person did not get there overnight. Nobody starts off with a successful business.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes you have, to me, I think there's a big factor of what luck plays into things as well, because there are sometimes you're just going to be in the right place at the right time. But also looking, and I'm going to put it back through the lens of photo, that there are times in your business that it's not going to be related to luck, to talent, anything. There's so many different factors that one thing could be there, and if that's what someone's focusing on, that's fine. For photos, like I've gotten this question before, they're like, how do you have photos that are that crisp, that clean? When I take it, it's like this, and it comes down to, well, actually, that's nothing to do with me, or that's just the equipment that I have. It's got those certain specs. So I'm big and I follow a lot of people. I think it's good to see what others are doing, but you have to put that limitation in yourself that you will never be them. Right. Any other coach looking at this is never going to be Janelle Anderson.
Right.
So just steering into that fact. So you're talking about this, what you did this weekend. Could you give a little bit more insight into what you were doing this weekend and what that was? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. To put that in context. So I run a lot of online events, and I teach coaches and speakers and authors or people that are trying to get their message out in the world or build a business from their expertise. And I teach them how to run virtual events, because virtual events is big now, especially since COVID. There are tons of them happening all the time. And you can attract audiences from everywhere. I had somebody there from Norway, from the UK. Last time I ran one, it was he was from Kumlapur, or I'm not sure I'm saying that right, but that country, all over the world, all over the country. And so we can conduct our business online. We can have clients anywhere. So doing a virtual event is super powerful, very profitable for many, many reasons. And so that's where I've landed, is really like helping people create the event, promote the event, and then run the event and make it really engaging and powerful for the people attending. But also, how do you then make your offer so that they buy into your program and you make money? So the whole thing. So we were doing a 3-day event called Virtual Events Bootcamp. And in that event, they create their blueprint of a 3-day event. Okay. As I'm teaching them. So cool. Super fun.
And with that, because that is really more of an international audience, but when a business owner is looking down at their product and what they're doing, how do you think that changes versus when you're looking at something that's local based? When you're looking at an in-person event that is, you might still, I think about our Women's Leadership Conference. We do have people come from all over the state, but we don't have anybody flying from Norway or the other place that you said that I'm not going to try to say. So how does that impact what you're doing when you're looking at what your actual audience is?
So an in-person audience?
Or? Well, whether it's in person, if you're looking to do virtual, does it change the way that you look at your marketing for that event? Because you're saying, oh, I'm not limited to a certain place, versus when you're looking at something locally, how do you make sure that you're tapping into that different feeling? Because I feel like when you're at Montgomery County, there is such even between the towns, you've got the point where someone's like, oh, well, this isn't Blacksburg, this isn't Christiansburg, this is here. How do you either look at that and focus on it? Or how do you look at that and not let it overrun your what you're trying to do?
Well, I do think there is a difference there's a big difference between running a virtual event and an in-person event, a local event. Whether you're trying to bring people in from everywhere or not would make a difference too. So I used to do in-person workshops here locally a lot more than I haven't been doing them since COVID, actually, because I got really focused on virtual. But I do want to get back to that because they are fun and they're different. You market them differently. You would even probably run them differently because now you're in the room with people. There's other things to consider when it's local, having the space and the food and all the stuff. But it's really, I think, more interactive. It's, when you can see people in person, it's definitely better in that way. It's just that virtual events are so easy.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, I would look at it differently. I would, if I was, or when I did, do local workshops, the promotion has to be really focused. Right now, I do a lot of online. I do like partners that promote me to their people all over the place. So there's no like limit. But here, then usually what I did was get sponsors. I would, try to find places to speak locally, get the word out through the chamber, get the word out, word of mouth especially, and invite sponsors to come and be a part of the event, and they can promote it. So you're looking more at local promoters, and then really, get on the radio, get on the newspapers, local sites that are focused here. So it's a different animal. Right. It's the same in a lot of ways, but it's different in where you focus your efforts so that, you get people in the room.
Right.
So.
Would you say that when doing it virtually, do you have less limitations in how you're approaching that because it can have a lot wider audience? Or do you think it's actually the opposite? Do you think you're more limited because you don't have as much of the word of mouth that can work by, you said you can share it out to partners and they can share it out to others, but it's not the same because you don't have the sponsors that are also sharing and doing that. Do you think you're more limited, or do you actually think you've got more of an open chance? Like, do you do any, do you do any boosted posts or anything like that when you're trying to market those?
Yeah, there's definitely different strategies. I don't know. I mean, I think both, there's going to be limits or disadvantages and advantages either way. It really depends on what your end goal is in mind. When I'm promoting something online, I don't use a lot of social media. I don't boost posts. I don't run ads because I don't know how to do that very well. And also it's cold traffic. They don't know me.
Right.
So my major strategy is my JV partners, because they're going to say to the people on their email list, hey, Janelle is my friend, my colleague. They're going to, that's word of mouth in an online world. Right. And you get a much warmer audience that way. And the more of those that are out there promoting you, the more people you're going to draw into your event. I'll do some social media promotions, but it's largely my JV partners, and then to my own list, which is now pretty large. And then speaking. So the other strategy for online marketing is to get on as many summits and podcasts and conferences and other events that are online, get a speaking spot, talk about what I do. I give sort of an overview of running a virtual event, and then I invite them to my event. And I can have, last time I had like 100 people registered before I ever promoted.
Oh, wow.
Just from speaking about it.
I mean, that's the power of also like referral based anything is, I mean, the warm part, I really love that you talk about that. We focus on that a lot in Case, where we talk about Case, for someone who might not know, is a referral based networking group that we have here at the Chamber. If you're interested, reach out to me. But we talk a lot about the importance of a hot lead versus a cold lead, because a cold lead, frankly, is barely better than if I were cold calling.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily going to go where, versus a hot lead that is someone that's already ready, they're interested, they know what expecting. You're going to have a better chance of actually converting that to closed business.
Absolutely.
So, and I also appreciate you talking about being on podcasts and stuff. I wonder where someone could do that. But I also kind of like to see those things as almost like an interview. I mean, I think when you're able to look at an event and say, all right, I'm looking at someone for a keynote speaker. What are they like? What do they sound like? Before you ever even talk to them, if you can go and find something like this and see how they handle themselves, particularly in situations where you don't know any of the questions I'm throwing at you today. So
right.
I think that's a really good avenue. Speaking of speaking, when you're looking at that and you're looking at business owners that have some of the troubles there, what is the most common, I guess, hesitancies do you see from business owners when it comes to speaking?
Well, they say, I think it's either 95% or 97% of people say they'd rather die than speak in public.
That's a huge number. I've never heard of that.
That's a huge one. Just the stage fright.
Yeah.
Everybody gets nervous before they speak. Even an accomplished, professional speaker still gets a little bit of butterflies.
Mm-hmm.
But they've learned practices to mindset shifts and breathing and all the things to help with that. And that's just a normal reaction. But there are people, until you've done it, I used to be terrified. Like if I got up in front of a group of people, I'd just be blank stare and, so nervous, and my mind would just go blank and I would want to disappear. So it is a skill you learn, but that's really one of the first ones that people say to me is like, I'm just too nervous. I'm too scared. I wouldn't know what to say. I wouldn't know what to do. And that's really just training. It's skill building. It's practice. Toastmasters, there's local Toastmasters here that, that's a great place to practice that. And the more that you speak and the more that you're able to think on your feet, answering questions you have no idea what they're going to be. And then the more confident that you are and the better you know your topic, you just don't have the nerves like that anymore. So, and I'd say another big hindrance is the thought of who would want to hear me speak, who would want to have me on their stage. 2 years ago, I was invited to be the keynote speaker at the Women's Leadership Conference, which was a huge honor. And I hadn't even applied for it. And it just blew me away because it showed me I've been working on this for a while and I've become known and recognized as a speaker. And here this door of opportunity opened up. Whereas when I first started, there weren't those opportunities. I had to knock on doors. I had to work on my skill. I had to go looking for it and just do it.
Yeah.
So it's just takes time and it takes effort, but I think it's worth it for anybody that owns a business to work on some speaking skills and to find those places to speak. Those opportunities are out there. They're everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that reminds me of, from my time in theater, we always used to joke because there was always a question that we knew was going to come at every talk back. And it was, how do you memorize all of those lines? And it's just a matter of, well, that's part of my training. I've done it so many times that I know how to make sure I do it because at the end of the day, it's my job. So I do want to, when we get back from the break, I want to talk a little bit more about how speaking, even though someone maybe think they're really uncomfortable and not really looking forward to it, how that is in a way a part of their job. Janelle Anderson at Emerging Life Coaching believes that every person has greatness inside them, and she's passionate about helping you become fearlessly confident, finding your own voice, and pursuing your own passions so that you can make the impact you are meant to make in the world. Her personalized, hands-on approach, calming presence, and excellent teaching and mentoring skills helps keep you focused and make steady progress without feeling overwhelmed by all the shiny objects and things. You'll be in good hands every step of the way because she'll be with you every step of the way. Are you ready to start your journey to becoming a business leader who makes a massive impact in the world? If so, contact Emerging Life Coaching today and discover how they can help you unlock your full potential, build your confidence, and get your message in front of more of your audience. For more information, go to emerginglifecoaching.com. That's emerginglifecoaching.com. Now back to the episode. All right, and we're back. And so, I want to talk about when you're looking at a business owner and you're looking at someone that may have that hesitancy and be like, oh, no one needs to know what no one wants to know. There's something, and I know she's a client of yours, so I'm going to point out something Christina Rose said on her episode, which was, you may think that, and you may think that, oh, everybody knows this because I just know it, but that's not the case. And most of the time, people have no idea what it is. So how do you pinpoint and look at some of that? I guess I'm trying to get free coaching right now, but how do you look in and how do you work with someone on those lines to kind of make it more of a priority and more of a focus for them?
Because they feel like there's nobody really interested. And so,
yeah, they feel like there's nobody interested, or rather there's nobody interested specifically in them being the one to tell it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Christine's a great example of that. You know, she's just has a natural presence and she's not afraid to speak, but she didn't realize the value in what she had, not only being a photographer, but her ideas of programs she wanted to start, and also sharing with audiences little tips. And I think at the breakout session she did last year, we worked on that together. She did such a fabulous job. And it was all about, you know, different ways to share your brand with the world and how important that was. And that's something that not a lot of people know. In fact, I'd say probably most business owners really don't understand branding and how to get their brand out there and have it be recognized. And she had all this knowledge, not only being a photographer, but just a brand photographer and being really interested in it. But she didn't realize that it was such a valuable content that people actually really want. And I run into that a lot with my clients, where they think, like you said, well, everybody knows this, right? Or the other one is, there's so many other people out there teaching the same thing. What could I say that would be any different or any more interesting? And there's that comparison again. But nobody is you.
Yeah.
And nobody has your perspective or your experience with that topic and how you learned it and what you went through to get where you're at. And even how you would share it would be different. And there are people, I tell this to my clients all the time, your people are looking for you. There are people out there wanting to know what it is that you have. And you can't have an impact on their lives if you're not out there sharing it. And I think sometimes people don't realize that's true until they've done it the first time, like Christina did, and she was like blown away. So it's kind of like, just trust me, just trust me, and put this out there. You will find people who come to you and say, wow, I did not know that. Just this past weekend at that event, a couple of people were like, I didn't know that. And I'm thinking, really? You didn't know that? Right.
And how do you, because I feel like a large part of it is confidence. I mean, I've seen people that talk about, yeah, I had to take public speaking for this in college, and I hated this class, but now that I've done it more, I feel so. How does someone take those first steps to like really break through and go, I'm not confident about this and I'm still going to do it? So yeah, good. Well, the first step would be finding somebody to help you learn the skills. You know, like I mentioned, Toastmasters. And of course, I do a lot of that work too, and train people how to put together their talk and how to present, and just find a place where you can start to learn the skills, because once you do, your confidence will grow, and you can do the practicing in the safety of the class or with the coach or however you're in Toastmasters before you ever go out in a public platform. And I would highly recommend that rather than stepping out in a public platform for the first time without any training, because you first impressions and all of that, you might really blow a chance to make a sale or whatever just because you didn't work on it. I mean, the more prepared you are, the better. Although really good preparation means that you can talk just naturally off the cuff because you're really good at it. You know, You're not like reciting something from memory or reading something, which that's boring. But, and also like what we were talking about before with, do people even want to hear this, is that you're so used to your own content. You're so used to what you already know and what you've learned. And so many of us, I'd say the majority of us, assume that since I know it and I can do it really well, then everybody else knows it. Right. But they don't, because they're not you and they haven't been through your journey. So, take that expertise that you have worked hard to gain, and put it into a format that becomes a talk, an inspirational talk, or, there's different kinds of talks. You might be trying to sell something. Sell from stage is a term we use, or just inspirational. You're just trying to inspire people, which is
what my talk was at the Women's Leadership Conference. You know, I was just inspiring people with my own journey, and it was all about women finding out who they are. And, you know, you just really can make a huge impact with your message. So, you know, everybody has a message. Everybody has a voice. Everybody has value to share. So take the time to form that into a structure that could be presented in a way that really takes people on a journey with you. There's a quote by Dale Carnegie that says that a talk is a voyage with a purpose. And the man who doesn't have a destination or doesn't know where he's going will go nowhere, something like that. And so I always look at talks or presentations or even events as I always use the analogy of a road trip. We're going to go on a trip together here. We're going to go on a journey. We're going to go on an adventure. We don't know where it's going to go. You have to kind of be flexible, knowing that your audience is playing into it as you're interacting with them, and can even change the whole talk. You give the same talk to two different audiences, and it can, but it's fun and it's a journey, and it's an experience that you're giving people with your content. And people don't want to just listen to information.
Right.
They want to experience the information for themselves. They're interested, not because they just want to listen to you give information. They want to experience it with you and have that. That's why people go to conferences and stuff like that, you know? So when you look at it that way, it becomes fun and impactful. And to me, it's like, when an audience is with me and they're really drawing from me and we're like in this together, there's just like nothing better in the world than that.
It reminds me a little bit of stand-up comedy in the sense that I know there's so many people that have been, I'm one of them, that looks at it and goes, I could do that. But there is so much more to it than just, hey, I'm funny and hey, I'm this. There's a strategy behind all of it. I mean, I once worked with a stand-up comedian. I did 5 shows a week with her for a month, and it was the same exact material, but there was never a point that it felt like she was delivering it as if it were the same exact material. Right. She kept everything where it's always a new audience. It's new information to them, no matter what. So how does someone go about, you talking about the structure, and I really like the road trip analogy. For me, it's a lot of outlines. For all of the podcast, I don't have a script. I don't have any of that. What I do have is I've got my opening question, I've got my ending question, and I've got my break point. And in there, I've got a couple of outline points that are like, all right, great. A question about journey, a question about this. How would someone go about looking at what their signature talk is going to be, what they're going to do, and create either an outline or their road trip map? What are those first steps beyond coming to you? What are the first steps, to then come to you?
Yes. First steps would be like, what's the topic of my talk and who's the audience? What impact do I want to have on them in this talk? And really get clear on that. So that becomes your starting point, basically. And then usually I have everybody work on the destination first. Like that quote, you've got to have a destination on your road trip. You got to know where you're going so that you can plan the trip to get there. And so we work on, what is the outcome? What do you want people to walk away with from this talk? Or is there something you want them to buy or do? Or do you want them to book a session with you or go to your store or go to your website? And what's the takeaway for them too? So let's look at the destination. And then you plan the content, you work backwards, you reverse engineer it. And I always recommend that you only stick to maybe 3, no more than 5 main points. I like 3. Just people generally learn better and retain better in 3s. Yeah. And so you just have your 3 points, no matter how long the talk is, because if you have a longer talk, you can go more in depth and give people, things to interact with you around that. If it's a live audience, you might have them stand up and turn to the person next to them and say something, or maybe they have, sit down and take notes on this, jot these 3 things down, you can do more of that in a longer talk. But you have your 3 main buckets, basically content blocks. And then within that, you're developing that point, tell a story, have the people do something, and then you move. And those are like stepping stones to get you to that destination. So all the content should be heading towards that destination that you decided ahead of time. So that's basically a talk structure.
Yeah. And how does someone go about making sure that it's really true to themselves? Because I think about TED Talks, and I also think about the TED Talk that is basically making fun of TED Talks, where the person comes out and they're like, I'm delivering this information this way, and because I'm delivering it, now it's interesting. So how does someone make sure that they are making it unique to themselves without necessarily falling into many of the tropes and the tricks of what speakers do? Because same thing, like comparison, you don't want to watch someone's speech and then come out and reenact their mannerisms.
No.
How do they make sure that they're not doing that themselves?
Yeah. You do have to be authentic to you. TED Talk structures different. I mean, there are different structures for different types of talks, and you do want to look at that as your framework because they are best practices. But within that, you've got to be you, and you want to be very creative. It's a creative thing, and how you normally would act and talk. Like, don't try to take on somebody else's personality. Like, don't try to be Tony Robbins if you're not. And just be yourself. But then, what are the funny quirks you have, or the things about your personality that you can play off of? Are you somebody that likes to move around a lot? Do you have, just naturally energetic, or, you'd want to use the stage, and you want to use mannerisms and use that intentionally. Your mannerisms and how you use the stage should actually be a part of your content. But you also don't want to look so rehearsed that it's like mechanical. And, there is a balance there, and it does come with practice. At first, people are going to be awkward and stiff, and that's why practicing over and over again is really helpful, and you get more comfortable. And just be yourself, just be you. They love authenticity. They can tell when you're not and you're sticking to some kind of script. They just will love you. Even if you mess up and you forget a line or you say something out of order, they don't know that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's so many shows I've done where something exactly like that, something goes wrong, and because it, you're like, oh, and so I've seen people that have both panicked because they immediately go into, oh, everybody knows I've messed up. And then I've also seen people that have passed it off and no one will ever know.
No one will ever know. Yeah.
My two favorite examples, there was one, we did Death of a Salesman in college, and one of the professors, he was retiring at the end of the semester, and he was playing the lead role, and all of a sudden he skipped 5 or 6 pages. And so everybody's like panicking, like, I don't know what to do. And then somehow he managed to make his way back. And so it was one of those like, yeah, we knew it because we were following along the script, but no one else in the crowd knew it. Yeah. And then I also have seen I did a musical version of A Christmas Carol, and our Scrooge got to the part right after it's like, what day is it? And they say, and then they blanked on their next few lines, and they full on panicked. I mean, they like tossed their hat up in the air, ran backstage, and suddenly that was the end of the show. And so we went right into curtain call. But even in that, we all knew, but the audience had no idea. I remember talking to my parents, and they were like, yeah, it was a different ending. I'm not used to that. And I was like, well, yeah, in this ending right now, Tiny Tim is still dying. Like, nothing's been resolved. But it just goes to show that, like, people don't know if you don't lead on to it.
Yeah.
I guess one other question I have specifically about, as someone's preparing their speaking engagement, as they're looking at that, you're talking about the different types of talks. Within the different types, how does someone manage different lengths? Because I think about the Women's Leadership Conference, again, we've got breakout sessions that are 45 minutes. The keynote is an hour and a half. How does someone manage or even cut back on what is going to be in their content in order to stay within a time frame? And I guess a second part of that is, why is it important to stay in that time frame?
Yeah, good questions. I remember telling people that I had an hour and a half to give that talk for the Women's Leadership Conference, and they were like, what are you going to do in an hour and a half? And I'm like, that's actually easier than a shorter talk, because you really have to be careful with your words. And what I do is I train people to come up with their signature talk and base it on about a 30-minute talk. And then you can take that, what you've created, and you can easily expand it or condense it. But you have your talk. You don't have to create a whole new talk.
Right.
The way that you condense it is there are things that you can leave out and that aren't essential to the main point. Maybe you shorten the story, or you just don't go into as much detail on a key point, and you just practice it and put a timer and keep with it, and even like less than the time that you're given, so that in case, you know, you take longer or you pause too long or something, you give yourself that time. And then if it's longer, then you just get to fill in more detail and tell the story in more detail that you have in there, and let the people, you know, you can add in more interactive types of things. Like when I did the hour and a half for the Women's Leadership Conference, there were some interactive exercises I had them doing that I could take out if I needed to. And I went into a lot more detail with my story. So when it's shorter, though, you want to make sure that you leave the most important content in there and that you make every word count, and, you know, even go to Word Hippo or something like that and like look up different words that mean more than just, say you have a phrase. Well, how could I make this more impactful? Maybe I could use one word as opposed to this whole phrase. And there's lots of little, speaking is so different than writing. So there's a lot of those transitional words we use when we write, we don't need in our speeches. You can make shorter sentences, even phrases. It's actually better and more interesting to listen to, and it carries the action. So there's a lot of that wordsmithing you can do. And then to answer your question about sticking to the length, very important. If you've been, even if it's your own stage, if you've told people the time, you got to honor their time. They're going to be mad at you if you go over. And if you are invited on somebody else's stage, stick to that time and practice it with a timer as many times as you can, so to make sure that you are really comfortable and you know you're not going to go over, and you don't have to look at the time because you've done it so many times, you know it's going to fit in time inside that time frame. And then that way you honor everyone, everybody's happy.
Yeah, I've seen many scenarios where someone is a great speaker, great at presenting what they're doing, but then literally the minute they go over and someone feels that they've gone over, the sale's gone because you just, there's something in that brain. I mean, a lot of what we focus on at the chamber is like more of the 60 seconds and then the 10-minute long presentations, because that's what we have time for in those things, and we fit them into others. But I like the idea of you're taking 30 minutes and you're being able to say, okay, great, what is this version? What is that version?
Yes.
And also knowing that, again, people won't know something's left out, and they won't know that you've added any of that. But you also, I feel like if you are presenting it in a way that you are good and you are comfortable and you are fine with it, to me, that is more of the goal, because you're never going to please everybody.
No.
I think about the Harry Potter movies and all the complaints that I see people have where it's like, they left out this scene from the book and this scene from the book. And it's like, yeah, they have an hour and a half to 2 hours. It's not like a multi-season TV show where you've got a different time. It's about telling the story and the constraints you've got. Well, tell everybody where they can find you, where they can get more information, anything you've got coming up, any of that stuff.
Yeah. So my website is emerginglifecoaching.com. And I also have an app, which is Emerging Life Coaching. So you can download it from your app store. And there's a website that goes with the app. That's emerginglifecoach.com. So if you want to use the web version instead of your phone, I have lots of content on there. A lot of my courses are on there, and recordings and videos and articles, all kinds of stuff. And then my regular website tells more about me, and I try to keep up with it, like upcoming events. And then what I have coming up is I'm going to run my course again. It's called Own the Room, Design and Deliver Your Captivating Talk from Any Stage. And that's the one that Christina went through, and a couple other people locally here, Michael Gallagher, another one. And it's a really great course because we actually sit down, and I don't just teach you how, we work on it together. So we take each section of your talk and we spend time actually writing it and working on it right then and there, because I know how busy people are. And if I just tell them what to do, they're going to go away and not have time to do it.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a working type of session. And then by the end of it, you have it put together and we practice parts of it together so that you're getting comfortable presenting it. So that's a really fun course. And that's going to be coming up soon. It's 8 weeks. And I also have online, it's every Monday at 12:30. I have a little, I call it a Zoom show. It's called the Speakeasy Cafe. And I just come on and we talk about different tips. Like this month, we are talking about how to build your email list. Last month, we were talking about why people don't buy, like when you're doing in an event, what the mistakes that people make inside of an event that keep people from actually buying, which is really interesting. The psychology of selling, why people buy. So things like that. And I do that every Monday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time, and people can log on there. And then we have a little Q&A session. So
cool.
Yeah.
All right. I'm thinking about a picture, everyone in their underwear kind of thing. But could you give us a quick trick of the trade that is just like a singular fact that someone can think about as they're looking at what's coming up before they go to emerginglifecoaching.com and they book Janelle to talk more about it?
What do you mean, a quick tip to...
a quick trick of the trade of all right, you're on stage and you have the hiccup moment.
Oh, gotcha.
And, what's something along those lines that you think people should just have in their back pocket?
So you were mentioning picturing people in their underwear. That doesn't work.
No, to me, I'd be so much more uncomfortable.
It's so awkward, yes. And the other thing that people will say is look over people's heads, but don't do that either. People like it when you make eye contact.
Yeah.
And that, for a new speaker, that feels very awkward and weird. So what I always say is just, and I do this all the time, is you find a friendly face and you look at them for about the length of time of a sentence as you're talking. And you just look right at them and they're going to smile at you. And everybody around them thinks you're looking at them too. And they're going to feel connected to you. And then after that sentence is over, just move to another person and just sort of scan the room and look at different people. And don't stare them down, just, for the length of a sentence or two. And then everybody in the room feels connected to you and they warm up to you and they're smiling at you. And so then it's not so awkward and you're making eye contact.
That's awesome. Do you think, I've heard a lot about something similar where it's when you're looking, if you don't want to look in their eyes, it's look between them. Do you think that works, or does that look more awkward? Or
I think that's awkward too.
Okay.
I always think of it as just if you're having a conversation. In fact, I forget who said this. It might have been Dale Carnegie again, but he said, or Brian Tracy, one of these big guys that are big in that field, said to think of the audience as one big friend. And they're there because they want to hear from you. They are there for you. They're not against you. Rarely is there somebody out there that's wanting you to fail, because why would they come?
Right. Yeah.
Right. They came because they're interested in whatever the topic is, or they're interested in the conference and that they're a part of, and they want you to succeed because they want to hear something great from you. They want to hear what you have to say. And so keep that in mind when you're looking at everyone, that they're there for you. They want to hear what you have, and you're giving them this gift. And when you get your mind off of you, like, how do I look? How do I sound? What is people thinking of me? What are people thinking of me? Then you're going to be nervous. If you can switch that to, these people are here because they want to be, and they're here ready for this wonderful content I'm about to give them, and it's going to bless them and make their lives better. And I'm so excited to be able, then the nervousness will change to excitement, and they will feel it as well. That's how I deal with nerves every time. I do that whole little switch in my mind.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Sure. Thank you all of our listeners for checking in. We will see you again next week. In the meantime, go out, invest, connect, engage, and prosper.